In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Welcome to Journey to Jannah, where timeless wisdom meets the present day. Here we bring you audiobook-style biographies of the greatest minds in Islamic history, scholars, thinkers, and reformers who shaped the course of knowledge, faith, and civilization. From Imam Abu Hanifah to Ibn Sina, from Al-Ghazali to Sayyid Qutb, each story is a journey through trials, triumphs, and unwavering dedication to the pursuit of truth. Sit back, reflect, and let your heart travel through centuries of Islamic heritage. One voice, one story, one lesson at a time. Subscribe now and begin your journey toward knowledge, inspiration, and Jannah, inshallah. Journey to Jannah, where knowledge lives. The Lamp of Kufa, the life and legacy of Imam Abu Hanifah.
In the vast and intricate tapestry of Islamic scholarship, certain figures emerge not merely as scholars, but as radiant beacons, illuminating paths, shaping generations, and anchoring entire schools of thought. Among these is Nu'man ibn Thābit, better known to the world as Imam Abu Hanifah, the Lamp of Kufa, whose intellect and integrity cast a light that has endured for over a millennium. Born in the 1st century of Islam, in the bustling, pluralistic city of Kufa, a crucible of cultures, ideas, and early Islamic discourse, Abu Hanifah lived at a time when the Muslim world was transitioning from the simplicity of the prophetic era to the complexities of governance, law, and theology. The echoes of the Prophet's voice still resonated in the hadiths passed from the mouths of the Tabi'un, the generation after the companions, and yet new challenges demanded new ijtihad, independent reasoning rooted in divine principles. Abu Hanifah, a man of Persian heritage and merchant upbringing, did not come from a family of traditional scholars. His early years were spent among the rolls of silk, in the hum of market chatter, where precision, honesty, and judgment were paramount. These qualities, tempered by an innate thirst for knowledge and a sharp analytical mind, would form the foundation of a legal philosophy that emphasized reason, public welfare, and unwavering ethical principles. He was not merely a jurist, but a man who dared to stand against tyranny, to challenge unjust rulers with his pen and principle, and to nurture a generation of scholars who would carry his legacy far beyond the borders of Kufa. His method, Fiqh al-Ra'i, jurisprudence based on reasoned opinion, balanced with the textual sources, would eventually shape the largest school of Islamic law. The Hanafi madhhab, embraced by empires and individuals alike from the Indian subcontinent to the Balkans, from the Abbasids to the Ottomans. This biography is more than a chronicle of events. It is a journey into the soul of a scholar whose legacy is not written solely in books of law, but in the hearts of those who seek justice, knowledge, and God's pleasure. Through historical reconstruction, narration, and imagination grounded in authentic sources, we invite you to walk the streets of 8th century Kufa, to sit in the majlis of Abu Hanifah, to witness the trials he endured, and to reflect on the enduring wisdom he left behind. As you turn the pages of this work, may you not only learn about Imam Abu Hanifah, but be inspired by him.
The dawn in Kufa.
The sun rose gently over the bustling city of Kufa, casting a soft golden glow over its narrow streets, winding alleys, and domed houses. The call of the marketplace, the murmur of scholars discussing in mosques, and the cries of merchants filled the air with life. It was here, in the cradle of a newly formed Islamic civilization, that a child was born who would one day become a towering figure in the history of Islam. His name was Nu'man ibn Thābit. Though the world would come to know him as Abu Hanifah, he was born in the year 80 in the year of the Hijrah, approximately 699 Common Era, a time when the Muslim world was expanding rapidly, yet still reeling from the internal divisions that had shaken it after the death of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Kufa itself, founded by Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, was a city teeming with scholars, warriors, merchants, and mystics, a vibrant crossroads of cultures and ideas. Abu Hanifah's family were originally of Persian descent. His grandfather had embraced Islam during the time of the caliphs, and his father, Thābit, was a man of piety and good reputation. It is said that Thābit once met the noble companion, Ali ibn Abi Talib, may Allah honor his face, who prayed for blessings upon him and his descendants. Whether this account is exact or not, the fragrance of that era, the closeness to the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, surrounded Abu Hanifah's early upbringing like a sweet and enduring scent. His household was modest but dignified. They were known not for wealth or political power, but for their upright character and commitment to the faith. Kufa was already becoming a center for Islamic scholarship, boasting the likes of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud's students, and Abu Hanifah would grow up inhaling the very air of knowledge without even realizing it. In his youth, Abu Hanifah was more inclined towards commerce than scholarship. His father had established a respectable business in silk and cloth. From an early age, Abu Hanifah showed sharp intelligence in buying and selling. He would accompany traders to the bustling souks, where the arts of negotiation, trust, and fairness were not just skills, but moral obligations for a Muslim merchant. His honesty and keen mind soon earned him respect among the traders of Kufa. Yet destiny was quietly weaving a different path for him, a path far more enduring than the riches of trade. One day, while walking through the streets, Abu Hanifah passed by a well-known scholar, Shabi, one of the luminaries of Kufa at the time. Shabi observed something extraordinary in the young man, a sharpness of mind, a light in his eyes. Approaching him, Shabi asked, "Where are you headed, young man?" "To the market," replied Abu Hanifah. Shabi, with the kindness of a seasoned teacher, smiled and said, "I see in you signs of intelligence and alertness. You should seek knowledge and sit in the gatherings of scholars." Those words, though simple, pierced deep into Abu Hanifah's heart. They lingered in his mind and stirred something within him that even he did not fully understand at the time. From that moment, a new world began to open before him, a world of scholarship, debate, understanding, and service to the religion of Allah. At first, Abu Hanifah balanced both worlds, trade and scholarship. He would attend study circles and gatherings of scholars, absorbing knowledge like the parched earth soaks in rain. Kufa, with its unique blend of companions' teachings, Persian culture, and Arab tradition, provided the perfect soil for his intellectual and spiritual growth. Among the early fields of knowledge he delved into were the sciences of Aqidah, creed, and Kalam, theology. At a time when controversial sects and groups were challenging the core beliefs of Islam, it was said that Abu Hanifa was a master debater even in his youth, able to refute falsehood with clarity and calmness, a gift that would later save him and the faith of many others from confusion. Still, his heart yearned for something deeper. He longed to understand the Sharia, to grasp the laws that Allah had sent for humanity, to apply wisdom in everyday life. Thus began the silent, determined transformation of Nu'man ibn Thābit, from a cloth merchant of Kufa to a seeker of timeless knowledge, whose name would echo across continents and centuries. The sun continued to rise over Kufa, but now, among the countless children playing in the streets, there was one whose destiny would soon carry the light of Islamic jurisprudence farther than anyone could have imagined. The lamp of Kufa had been lit, and its flame would never die.
Between commerce and scholarship.
The scent of spices, leather, and fine cloths filled the air of the Kufa marketplace. Merchants hawked their goods under the beating sun, their voices a chorus of ambition and need. Somewhere in that lively maze of stalls, young Abu Hanifa moved with practiced ease, inspecting silk garments, weighing cloth with careful hands, and bargaining with customers with a sharp yet honest tongue. Trade was an art in Kufa, an intricate dance of trust, persuasion, and fairness, and Abu Hanifa was mastering it. He had not abandoned his family's business when he began attending study circles. On the contrary, he continued to thrive as a merchant. Yet something subtle had shifted within him. The profits of trade, though important for his sustenance, no longer consumed his heart the way they once had. His mind often wandered beyond prices and textiles, drawn instead to the deep questions of faith and law. Each transaction, each contract, each oath sworn in the marketplace offered real-life applications for the knowledge he was acquiring. What was a valid contract in Islam? What constituted deception? How should disputes be settled fairly? For Abu Hanifa, the souk was no longer just a place to make a living. It had become a living laboratory for Islamic jurisprudence. He would later say, "Had it not been for 2 years with Hammad, I would have perished," referring to his eventual full-time dedication to Islamic scholarship. But in these earlier years, trade remained his teacher as much as any sheikh. A city of current Kufa in the early 2nd century after Hijrah was a city of intellectual and religious turbulence. It had been founded by Umar ibn al-Khattab as a garrison town. but by Abu Hanifa's time, it was a melting pot of Persians, Arabs, Yemenis, and others, bringing with them various interpretations of Islam. The companions of the Prophet ﷺ had left their mark on the city. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud had taught Quran, recitation, and fiqh here. Students of Ali ibn Abi Talib continued to transmit his legacy of wisdom and justice. Yet amidst this rich heritage, sectarian divisions also festered. The Khawarij preached rebellion. The Shia honored Ali with passionate loyalty, sometimes to extremes. The Murji'ah preached a doctrine of deferment in matters of faith and deeds. Theological debates were fierce, often spilling into political conflict. In this volatile environment, young Abu Hanifa honed his mind, learning not only the pure teachings of Islam, but also how to distinguish truth from distortion, balancing the two worlds. Each morning, Abu Hanifa would rise early and tend to his business affairs. Dressed simply but neatly, he would set up his stall in the market, selling cloth with honesty that earned him a reputation among both merchants and customers. Unlike many of his peers, he never engaged in deceitful practices. When a cloth had a defect, he would point it out to the buyer instead of concealing it. His adherence to truthfulness was not merely good business, it was an act of worship. He understood what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had said: "The honest merchant will be with the prophets, the truthful, and the martyrs on the day of resurrection." Tirmidhi. After fulfilling his responsibilities in the market, Abu Hanifa would seek out the gatherings of scholars, some held in mosques, others in private homes. Among his early teachers were Ata ibn Abi Rabah of Mecca, a student of Ibn Abbas; Ibrahim al-Nakhai, a leading jurist of Kufa; al-Shabi, the same scholar who had first directed him toward the pursuit of knowledge. He traveled whenever necessary, making journeys to Mecca and Medina to sit with the greatest scholars of the day. Through these studies, Abu Hanifa absorbed the deep concern for both the letter and spirit of the law. Yet he never fully detached from the practical world. Even as he learned intricate rulings about transactions, contracts, oaths, and disputes, he witnessed their application daily in the souks of Kufa. Thus, he became not merely a theoretician, but a scholar, rooted in the real lives of people. The crucible of debate. It was during these years that Abu Hanifa began participating in public debates, especially on matters of creed. He debated various sects: the Qadariyah, who denied divine predestination, the Murji'ah, and others, with sharp logic and deep knowledge of Quran and Sunnah. His early training in commerce had taught him negotiation. Now he used those same skills to defend orthodoxy. He once said, "Debate sharpens the mind and increases the ability to extract proofs." Yet unlike many debaters, Abu Hanifa maintained an ethical standard in argument. He avoided arrogance, insults, or trickery. His goal was not to win, but to reveal the truth. Through these debates, his reputation began to grow, not as a firebrand, but as a trustworthy, brilliant mind. The pull of destiny. Gradually, Abu Hanifa found that his heart leaned more and more towards scholarship. The income from his business gave him independence. He could pursue knowledge without begging rulers for favors or salaries. Later in life, when rulers offered him high judicial posts, he would refuse. He preferred freedom to worldly power. The discipline, honesty, and realism of his years in the marketplace had prepared him for that independence. It is said that he kept a simple way of life throughout, supporting many students from his own earnings, freeing them to seek knowledge without worrying about sustenance. The souk had taught him fairness, responsibility, and pragmatism. Now the circles of knowledge were calling him to a higher responsibility, to serve Allah by preserving, refining, and spreading His law. And so, step by careful step, Nu'man ibn Thābit was leaving behind the clamor of cloth and coin, and entering the rarefied, enduring world of Islamic scholarship. The world would soon know him by a name that would light mosques, courts, and hearts across continents: Abu Hanifa.
Masters in Journeys.
The city of Kufa bustled under the midday sun, its alleys shimmering in the heat. In the corner of a mosque, shaded by tall date palms, young Abu Hanifa sat cross-legged, surrounded by a circle of eager faces. But he was not the one speaking. Not yet. His eyes were fixed with intense focus on the man at the center, a towering figure of knowledge, a scholar whose words were measured yet powerful. This was Hammad ibn Abi Sulayman, one of Kufa's most respected jurists, and soon to be Abu Hanifa's most influential teacher. The boy who had once balanced bales of cloth and coins was now balancing verses of the Quran, narrations of hadith, and the weighty opinions of the companions themselves. Each session with Hammad was like stepping into a vast ocean, vast, deep, and sometimes overwhelming. Yet Abu Hanifa swam with the strength of one destined for mastery, finding the right teacher. Though he had learned from many, from Al-Shabi to Atta ibn Abi Rabah, it was with Hammad ibn Abi Sulayman that Abu Hanifa found a true guide in fiqh. Hammad had been a student of Ibrahim al-Nakhai, who himself had studied with the likes of Alqamah ibn Qais, a direct student of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Thus, the line of scholarship ran pure and strong, linking Abu Hanifa to the earliest generations of Islam. For 10 years, Abu Hanifa remained loyal to Hammad's circle. He did not rush to seek his own fame or gather followers around himself. Instead, he absorbed Hammad's methods of deriving rulings, careful reasoning, deep understanding of context, and cautious use of analogical reasoning, qiyas. Patience became his secret weapon. He would later say, "I stayed with Hammad for so long that I was ashamed to separate from him." The turning point one evening, as Abu Hanifa was preparing to retire after a long day of study, a messenger arrived breathless with urgent news. Hammad had fallen ill, and the responsibility of teaching the circle had fallen on Abu Hanifa's shoulders. At first, he hesitated. The shoes of a master were heavy to fill, but necessity leaves little time for doubt. He gathered Hammad's students and began teaching, weaving together everything he had learned. His memory was sharp, his reasoning precise, and his demeanor dignified. Day after day, until Hammad recovered, Abu Hanifa led the study circle, and word quickly spread across Kufa of the young man's brilliance. When Hammad returned, he recognized something that perhaps only he could see fully. His student had outgrown the confines of apprenticeship. The time had come for Abu Hanifa to step forward, not just as a seeker of knowledge, but as a pillar for others to lean upon. Journeys in search of knowledge. Even as he grew into a teacher, Abu Hanifa remained a seeker. He embarked on long and arduous journeys to the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, the beating heart of Islamic knowledge. In Mecca, he sat with Ata ibn Abi Rabah, the Mufti of the Haram, a student of Ibn Abbas. From him, Abu Hanifa learned not just rulings, but the subtleties of deriving principles from the Quran and Sunnah. In Medina, he benefited from scholars like Nafi, the freed, slave of Ibn Umar, Muhammad al-Baqir, the great-grandson of Ali ibn Abi Talib, Imam Jafar al-Sadiq, a towering figure respected by both Sunnis and Shia alike. Through these encounters, Abu Hanifa absorbed a depth of understanding that transcended the local traditions of Kufa. He drank from the springs of the Hijaz, where the direct influence of the Prophet ﷺ's companions was strongest. Yet Abu Hanifa did not merely mimic what he heard. His mind, sharpened by years of debate and real-world observation, sought to reconcile diverse narrations, understand the reasons behind rulings, and develop a consistent methodology for applying the Sharia to new situations. This drive would eventually lead to the formation of a system of jurisprudence that bore his name. But for now, he remained a humble student, gathering wisdom like a patient farmer gathering seeds for a future harvest. The foundation of his method. Among the principles he adopted during these travels were firm adherence to the Quran and authentic Sunnah as the primary sources, deep respect for the opinions of the Sahaba, especially where consensus, ijma, existed, use of qiyas, analogical reasoning, when no direct text existed, applying the principles of the law to new circumstances, consideration of public interest, maslahah, where appropriate, avoidance of unnecessary hardship for the people. This was no reckless innovation. Abu Hanifa viewed himself as a guardian of the Sharia's spirit as well as its letter, upholding its mercy, wisdom, and justice in an ever-changing world. He would later summarize his method. We take from the Book of Allah, if not, then from the Sunnah of His Messenger, if not, then from the sayings of His companions. If their opinions differ, we choose the most correct one. If it comes from others, we use ijtihad. Through these foundations, he was laying down not just a path for himself, but a highway upon which millions of Muslims would one day travel. The seed becomes a tree. By the time he returned to Kufa, Abu Hanifa was no longer merely a merchant scholar or a student among many. He was now a source of knowledge. Students began to gather around him in increasing numbers. Young men and seasoned scholars alike sat at his feet, attracted by his clarity, precision, and profound grasp of the law. But Abu Hanifa knew that with knowledge came responsibility, and that the road ahead would not be smooth. The world of politics loomed dangerously close, with rulers eager to conscript scholars for their legitimacy. Sectarian conflicts still raged across the lands. New challenges to faith and practice were arising every day. Still, the boy from the cloth market, the student who had once hesitated before stepping into Hammad's shoes, was ready. The journeys had forged him into a master. A storm was coming, but so too was a legacy that would stand the test of time.
The circle of light.
In the heart of Kufa, where traders bartered and poets sang, a different kind of gathering was forming, one not built on commerce or conquest, but on the thirst for knowledge. Inside the Grand Mosque, beneath its vast arches, a small circle of students sat patiently. At the center, a man wrapped in a simple cloak spoke with measured authority. His words were not loud, yet they carried across the stone floor like a breeze through a valley. This was Abu Hanifah, no longer just the promising student, but now the master, establishing the circle. After the death of his teacher, Hammad ibn Abi Sulayman, Abu Hanifah formally began to lead his own halaqah, a study circle where the methods he had absorbed and refined would now blossom. He did not simply recite traditions or repeat rulings. His was a circle of dialogue, debate, and deliberation. Students would pose real-life situations, some hypothetical, others drawn from the market, the courts, or the family home. And Abu Hanifah would guide them through the process of finding solutions, always anchored in the Quran, Sunnah, and the principles of sound reasoning. He was training not just scholars, but thinkers. Each session was a tapestry woven from careful reasoning, deep respect for the divine law, and a sharp awareness of human realities. The method of teaching. Abu Hanifah's method was revolutionary. Question first. He would first pose a question or accept a case from a student. Group deliberation. The students would discuss possible answers, giving evidence from Quran, Hadith, or reasoning. Critical analysis. Abu Hanifah would challenge assumptions, question their proofs, and refine their conclusions. Final ruling. Only after thorough examination would he give the final answer, if necessary at all. This method trained his students to think like jurists, not just memorize like parrots. He would say, "Discussion strengthens the understanding. Discussion brings out errors so they may be corrected." His halaqah was thus not a one-way transmission, but a dynamic laboratory of Islamic law. The students of light. Over time, Abu Hanifah attracted a generation of brilliant students, each destined to leave a deep mark on Islamic history. Among them, Abu Yusuf, Yaqub ibn Ibrahim al-Ansari, a poor orphan whom Abu Hanifah supported financially, who later became the chief judge, Qadi al-Qudat, of the Abbasid Empire. Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani, a sharp mind, who systematized much of the Hanafi school's legal theory in writing. Zufar ibn al-Hudayl, known for his strong use of independent reasoning, ijtihad. Al-Hasan ibn Ziyad, a leading transmitter of Abu Hanifah's rulings. Each student absorbed not just rulings, but a spirit, the spirit of applying divine law with mercy, wisdom, and rational clarity. Debates and refinement. In the circle, no opinion went unchallenged, even Abu Hanifah's own. He would invite, even welcome, respectful disagreement. If a student presented an argument stronger than his, he would sometimes retract his own position without hesitation. It was not unusual for a single issue to be debated over days, with rulings revisited, re-examined, and refined. This humility before truth was the soul of his teaching. He once said, "This knowledge is religion. Be careful from whom you take your religion." Thus, he crafted not blind followers, but critical, responsible scholars. Beyond the mosque, Abu Hanifa's influence spread beyond the mosque's cool arches. Merchants, judges, governors, even common craftsmen sought his counsel. They came not just for fatwas, but for guidance in applying Islam's principles to daily life. In a world riven by tribal divisions, political tensions, and emerging sects, Abu Hanifa's circle became an island of intellectual integrity. He taught that while truth is sacred, method matters. Justice was not to be imposed harshly, but applied with compassion. The Sharia was not a chain to enslave people, but a bridge to help them reach higher. Growth amid tension. Yet even as his fame grew, tensions simmered. Rulers feared independent scholars who refused to bow. Some sectarian groups resented his balanced positions, neither falling into extreme literalism nor drifting into reckless innovation. But Abu Hanifa stood firm, building his circle not on popularity, but on principle. The circle of light grew, not in noise, but in brilliance. And from it, rivers of knowledge would flow across the Ummah for centuries to come.
Trials and temptations.
As the moon cast its pale light over the city of Kufa, a new chapter of Abu Hanifa's life began. Not one of quiet study, but one of fierce struggle. It was a struggle not of the body, but of the spirit. Not one of swords, but of ideals. Abu Hanifa had always been a man of deep conviction, but now his beliefs would be put to the test by the political powers that surrounded him. Powers eager to co-opt his influence for their own gain. The call to power. In the early days of his fame, Abu Hanifa was approached by Al-Mansur, the Abbasid Caliph. The ruler, known for his sharp political instincts, saw the value of a man like Abu Hanifa by his side, a scholar whose integrity could bolster the legitimacy of his reign. Al-Mansur extended an invitation to Abu Hanifa, offering him a prestigious post as chief judge of the empire, a position that would come with wealth, prestige, and influence, but above all, a chance to wield power and influence the future of Islamic jurisprudence. Yet, Abu Hanifa remained unmoved. The very notion of serving as a judge under a ruler whose methods often clashed with the principles of justice was enough to shake him. He could not, in good conscience, be the instrument of a government that did not uphold the Quran and Sunnah. Abu Hanifa's refusal to accept the post was not a rejection of service to the community. It was rather a rejection of being part of a system where personal integrity and religious duty could be compromised for the sake of political expedience. The test of integrity al-Mansur's offer was a test, and Abu Hanifa passed it with dignity. But the refusal did not come without consequences. The caliph's courtiers, embarrassed by the public rejection, began to target. Rumors circulated and efforts were made to discredit Imam Abu Hanifah, but he remained unshaken. "I fear no one but Allah," he would say firmly. "If the ruler cannot uphold justice in his court, how can I serve in it?" As the pressure increased, Abu Hanifa was summoned again, this time under more serious circumstances. The caliph's demands grew stronger, and the consequences of refusal became more severe. Though warned of harsh penalties, Abu Hanifa stood firm, refusing to compromise his principles. His steadfast commitment to justice and truth became the hallmark of his character, imprisonment, and hardship. The relentless pressure on Abu Hanifa reached a difficult and somber moment in his life. In the quiet of night, soldiers came to his humble home to take him away. Abu Hanifa, now an elderly man, was brought before the caliph's court and confined. His cell was cold, and the comforts of home were taken from him. Though isolated and restrained, Abu Hanifa remained calm and composed. The prison guard, tasked with testing the Imam's spirit, found him quietly reciting verses from the Quran. There was no fear in his eyes, only steadfast faith and inner strength, only the quiet determination of a man who had already made his peace with his Lord. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Despite the harsh conditions, Abu Hanifa's spirit remained unbroken, but it was the harsh treatment he endured that changed the course of his physical life. His health began to fail under the weight of the prison's conditions. His frail body, worn from the hardships, could no longer bear the toll. Finally, the authorities, realizing they could not break him through force, decided to release him, though not before severely injuring his health. Even in the face of his suffering, Abu Hanifa never compromised his beliefs. His refusal to bow before tyranny marked him as one of the true champions of justice in Islamic history. The essence of his stance. Through these trials, Abu Hanifa demonstrated the true meaning of sacrifice for principle. He chose integrity over wealth. He chose truth over comfort. He chose Allah over the pleasures of this world. For Abu Hanifa, justice was not a tool to be wielded by the powerful, but a divine trust, to be administered without fear or favor. His unwavering stance in the face of immense political pressure would inspire generations of scholars. His refusal to compromise on the sacred trust of his position would become a defining moment in his life and legacy. The nature of power. For Abu Hanifa, power was never a means to enrich oneself or gain worldly status. Rather, it was a means to serve and uphold the moral and ethical values of Islam. He understood that the true power lay not in the throne or the title, but in the ability to stand up for what is right, even when the entire world seems to be pressing against you. Though he was not a man of the battlefield, his struggle was a struggle of ideals. In his refusal to become a tool of a corrupt system, Abu Hanifa exemplified the highest ideal of leadership, the ability to lead through righteousness, humility, and a deep commitment to truth.
making of a madhhab.
As the years passed and the trials continued, Imam Abu Hanifah's refusal to compromise his principles gradually shaped a legacy far greater than any title or worldly position ever could. His influence was no longer just local, it was becoming global. His methodology had already sparked the curiosity of his students and followers. But it was in the coming years that Abu Hanifa would begin the monumental work of establishing what would become one of the most enduring schools of thought in Islamic history, the Hanafi madhhab, the foundation of the Hanafi school in the heart of Kufa. As Abu Hanifa sat with his circle of students, it became clear that his approach to jurisprudence was distinct. His understanding of Islamic law was rooted not only in the Quran and Sunnah, but in reasoning and context. He believed that Islamic law should be adaptable to the changing circumstances of society, while always remaining anchored in the principles of the faith. What set him apart from many of his contemporaries was his ability to blend rational thought with religious fidelity. While other jurists focused primarily on hadith, prophetic traditions, or literal interpretations, Abu Hanifa emphasized the role of ijtihad, independent reasoning, qiyas, analogy, and istihsan, juridical preference. His vision was to create a system of law that was both flexible and principled, one that could adapt to the complexities of life while remaining true to the spirit of Islam. This approach gave rise to a new school of thought, grounded in intellectual rigor and moral integrity. The role of ijtihad. For Imam Abu Hanifah, ijtihad was the key to developing a living, breathing legal system. He believed that Islamic law was not a rigid set of fixed rules, but rather a dynamic process of reasoning and interpretation that needed to account for the ever-evolving circumstances of society. Where the Quran and Hadith were silent, or where ambiguities existed, Abu Hanifa's use of analogy allowed his followers to draw conclusions based on the best possible understanding of the law. But this reasoning was never arbitrary. It was always in service of justice, mercy, and the public good. "I am only a man," Abu Hanifa once remarked, "and my rulings are nothing but my opinion. If I am proven wrong, correct me." This openness to correction, this commitment to truth above all else, became a defining feature of the Hanafi school. Systematizing the legal theory. As the followers of Abu Hanifa grew in number, it became clear that his method needed to be formalized and systematized. Under his guidance, his students began to compile his teachings into books, lectures, and treatises, documenting his legal principles for future generations. The key texts of the Hanafi school, such as the Kitab al-Athar, Book of Traditions, would codify Abu Hanifa's approach to Islamic law and become the foundation for future Hanafi scholars. While Abu Hanifa himself did not write many books, his teachings were primarily passed down through direct instruction. His influence continued to grow as his students and followers preserved his teachings in the form of written works. This was the birth of the Hanafi madhhab, a school that would soon find its place at the forefront of Islamic jurisprudence. Abu Hanifa's students as scholars. The establishment of the Hanafi madhhab would not have been possible without the tireless efforts of Abu Hanifa's students. Among them were some of the most brilliant minds in Islamic history, each of whom contributed to the growth and expansion of the school. Abu Yusuf, Yaqub ibn Ibrahim al-Ansari. As the first chief judge of the Abbasid Caliphate, Abu Yusuf's contributions to the Hanafi madhhab were immense. His book, Kitab al-Kharaj, dealt with economic jurisprudence and taxation, and he is credited with spreading the teachings of Abu Hanifa far and wide. Muhammad ibn al-Hassan al-Shaybani. Muhammad ibn al-Hassan, one of Abu Hanifa's most famous students, wrote extensively on legal theory and was instrumental in systematizing the Hanafi school's approach to jurisprudence. His work on Fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence, helped make the Hanafi school accessible to future generations. Zufar ibn al-Hudayl, known for his sharp intellect and critical reasoning, Zufar's contributions to the Hanafi madhhab were profound. He helped refine the school's position on many issues and was a key figure in its development. Through these scholars and others, the Hanafi school began to spread across the Islamic world, reaching Bukhara, Khorasan, and later Anatolia, India, and even parts of North Africa. The spread of the Hanafi school. The spread of the Hanafi madhhab was aided by the political influence of the Abbasid Caliphate, as many of the empire's key administrators, judges, and scholars were followers of Abu Hanifa. This made the Hanafi school the official school of law in many parts of the empire. But it was not just the political system that helped the Hanafi school grow. The rational, flexible, and inclusive nature of its legal principles made it particularly appealing to merchants, intellectuals, and jurists alike. The emphasis on contextual reasoning meant that the Hanafi school could adapt to a wide variety of social, political, and economic situations. By the 10th century, the Hanafi madhhab had spread far beyond its birthplace in Kufa. It had become the most widespread and influential school of law in the Islamic world, shaping the legal landscape of the Ottoman Empire, the Mughal Empire, and much of South Asia. Lasting legacy. The Hanafi madhhab, born from Abu Hanifa's intellectual rigor and ethical commitment, continues to be one of the most prominent schools of Islamic thought. Its flexibility and intellectual depth have allowed it to remain relevant in a rapidly changing world, adapting to new challenges while staying true to its foundational principles. Abu Hanifa's legacy is not just in his rulings, but in his methodology. His approach to Islamic law, one that combined reason, compassion, and principle, has shaped not only the legal system, but the very way Muslims think about justice and morality. The Imam's influence, his emphasis on rationality, and his profound understanding of Islamic ethics will continue to guide Muslims for generations to come.
The storm of oppression.
Even as the Hanafi madhhab began to flourish and spread across the Islamic world, the shadows of political oppression loomed ever larger over Imam Abu Hanifah's life. The storm of oppression that he faced in his later years would not only test his faith, but would also leave a lasting impact on his character, his work, and his legacy. Despite the increasing recognition of his scholarship, the Abbasid rulers saw Abu Hanifa as a threat, a symbol of defiance in the face of political authority. His refusal to bend to their demands for cooperation, his insistence on justice, and his rejection of the corrupt system of governance led to mounting tension between the Imam and the rulers of his time. The relentless pursuit al-Mansur, the Abbasid caliph who had first offered Abu Hanifa a high post in his government, became an even fiercer adversary as time passed. The Imam's steadfast refusal to submit to the political pressures of the ruling regime began to eat away at the caliph's patience. By the time of al-Mansur's successor, al-Mahdi, Abu Hanifa's reputation had grown beyond the borders of Kufa. His legal principles were followed by scholars, judges, and even merchants, but his refusal to align himself with the corrupt political structures made him an increasing target for the rulers. It was under al-Mahdi's reign that the storm of oppression truly began. The caliph, eager to consolidate his power and quash any form of intellectual dissent, began to demand that Abu Hanifa accept a high-ranking position in the government. This time, the pressure was more intense. Abu Hanifa was summoned repeatedly to court, each time being promised wealth, power, and influence in exchange for his compliance. But once again, the Imam's unwavering commitment to his principles did not falter. He refused to compromise on his vision of justice, on his belief that Islamic law must be pure, free from political manipulation, and applied according to its core values: imprisonment and hardship. As the tensions escalated, the rulers resorted to harsher measures. Abu Hanifa was imprisoned once again, this time under the direct orders of al-Mahdi. The imprisonment was harsh. Abu Hanifa, already in his later years, was subjected to physical abuse in an effort to break his resolve. Yet, through it all, his faith did not waver. He bore his suffering with the same calm dignity that he had shown throughout his life. The harsh conditions of the prison, the beatings, and the lack of basic comfort did not diminish his spirit. The scholars and students who came to visit him in prison were often struck by the Imam's composure. One of his students, Abu Yusuf, would later recall that when he visited the Imam, he found him calm as ever, with no signs of despair. The decision to imprison the Imam. The Caliph, despite his efforts to break Abu Hanifa's spirit, ultimately realized that he could not succeed. The Imam's resilience was unmatched. However, instead of releasing him, the authorities chose a different method of oppression. They sought to imprison him for as long as possible, keeping him isolated from the world. Al-Mahdi hoped that by holding Abu Hanifa in prison, he would silence the voice of opposition that had become so influential in the Islamic world. However, this only strengthened the Imam's reputation as a martyr for the cause of justice. In prison, Abu Hanifa continued his studies. His commitment to knowledge and scholarship never ceased. He even began to dictate works of jurisprudence to his students, continuing to shape the future of the Hanafi madhhab even from behind bars. His resilience and intellectual vigor became a beacon of hope for those who followed his teachings. The impact on his legacy. While the Abbasid caliphs thought they had broken Abu Hanifa's influence, in reality, they had only amplified it. The Imam's courage in the face of tyranny became a legend, and his teachings continued to spread. Imam Abu Hanifa's refusal to compromise on his principles, even when faced with the full force of the state, solidified his status as one of the greatest scholars in Islamic history. His suffering at the hands of the rulers only added to the respect that he commanded. Though the political rulers of the time sought to oppress him, they ultimately could not erase the impact of his thought. Abu Hanifa's insistence on truth over power, justice over politics, and faith over fear made him an enduring symbol of resistance against oppression, even long after his death. Death and legacy. In the year 767 CE, after years of imprisonment and suffering, Abu Hanifa passed away in prison. His death was a tragic loss, but it was also a moment of triumph, for his integrity had withstood the greatest trials. As the news of his death spread, his followers mourned deeply, but they also vowed to carry on his legacy. His students, scholars, and disciples continued to spread his teachings throughout the world, ensuring that the Hanafi madhhab would endure for centuries. Today, the Hanafi school of thought is one of the most influential schools of Islamic jurisprudence, with millions of Muslims following its principles across the globe. The storm of oppression that Imam Abu Hanifa faced may have shaken him, but it never defeated him. His example remains a testament to
the enduring light.
The trials and tribulations of Imam Abu Hanifah's life, his intellectual triumphs, his political struggles, his perseverance in the face of oppression, did not end with his death. In fact, they marked the beginning of a new chapter in Islamic history, a chapter where his ideas would spread far beyond the walls of Kufa, resonating with scholars, rulers, and common people alike. Even today, the name Abu Hanifa is synonymous with justice, reason, and integrity in Islamic scholarship. His legacy, carefully nurtured by his students and disciples, would go on to shape the legal, social, and political fabric of the Islamic world for centuries. The global reach of the Hanafi madhhab. The true testament to Imam Abu Hanifah's brilliance is not only in the systematic and rational legal framework he created, but in the enduring nature of the Hanafi madhhab he founded. His approach to Islamic jurisprudence was intellectually sophisticated, yet it was also practical and adaptable, allowing it to thrive in different contexts, societies, and political systems. The spread of the Hanafi school was facilitated by both political and cultural forces. The Abbasid Caliphate, though a source of much of Imam Abu Hanifah's persecution, also helped to spread his teachings. As the Abbasids grew in power, their empire spanned large areas, from the heart of the Arab world to parts of Persia, Central Asia, and North Africa. As Abu Hanifa's students assumed key positions in the government, legal systems, and academic circles, the Hanafi madhhab was incorporated into the very framework of these expanding empires. By the 10th century, the Hanafi school had become the dominant school of thought in much of the Islamic world, particularly in Anatolia, Balkans, India, and the Ottoman Empire. In the Ottoman Empire, the Hanafi madhhab became the state's official school of law. It influenced everything from taxation to marriage contracts. The intellectual legacy Imam Abu Hanifah's influence was not limited to the legal field. His intellectual impact extended into a wide variety of areas, including ethics, theology, and philosophy. He left behind a legacy that transcended the walls of his madrasa and extended into the intellectual currents of the broader Islamic world. His commitment to ijtihad, independent reasoning, was revolutionary. By encouraging critical thought and intellectual independence, Abu Hanifa laid the groundwork for an entire tradition of Islamic scholarship that would thrive for centuries. His emphasis on reasoning and contextual analysis would influence generations of scholars, including those who would go on to write fiqh, jurisprudence, and usul al-fiqh, the principles of Islamic jurisprudence. The Hanafi approach to jurisprudence was later adopted by many scholars, not just for its flexibility and rationality, but also for its emphasis on justice and the public good. In the centuries after his death, scholars like al-Shaybani, al-Tahawi, and al-Maturidi built upon the foundations laid by Abu Hanifa, expanding and refining his legal methodology. Abu Hanifa's willingness to engage with reasoning and his refusal to accept the status quo influenced later scholars of various disciplines. His teachings opened the door for a more holistic and dynamic interpretation of the Quran and Sunnah, inviting Muslims to approach their faith with both humility and intellect. The Hanafi madhhab in South Asia. In the Indian subcontinent, the Hanafi madhhab was solidified as the primary school of law during the Delhi Sultanate and later under the Mughal Empire. The Mughal emperors, who ruled over vast portions of India from the 16th to the 19th centuries, found the Hanafi legal framework well-suited. Emperors like Akbar and Aurangzeb actively promoted the Hanafi madhhab, with scholars and jurists practicing and disseminating the legal principles of Imam Abu Hanifah. As the Ottoman Empire spread its influence across the Mediterranean and beyond, the Hanafi school found its way into regions of North Africa, including Egypt and parts of Tunisia and Algeria. The Hanafi madhhab took root in these regions not just because of political influence, but because of the respect it commanded as a mature legal tradition that emphasized rational thought and justice. Over time, it became the dominant school of thought in much of Central Asia, South Asia, and the Ottoman Empire. The rise of modern Hanafi scholarship. In modern times, the Hanafi school continues to be the most widely followed legal school within the Sunni Muslim world. Its scholars continue to be at the forefront of Islamic thought, tackling contemporary issues using the intellectual framework laid down by Imam Abu Hanifah. Organizations like the Dar al-Ulum in Deoband, India, and Al-Azhar University in Cairo continue to teach and propagate the Hanafi principles to a new generation of students. Islamic jurists and scholars around the world continue to look to Abu Hanifah for guidance, drawing upon his legal theories to navigate the challenges of a rapidly changing world. In Pakistan, Bangladesh, and parts of Afghanistan, the Hanafi madhhab remains the most widely followed school of thought. Its intellectual approach continues to shape the legal systems and educational institutions of these nations. In the West, Hanafi scholars are often consulted for issues related to Islamic finance, family law, and interfaith dialogue. Imam Abu Hanifah's immortal legacy. The legacy of Imam Abu Hanifah is more than just a legal system. It is a model of intellectual resilience and moral integrity. Throughout his life, Abu Hanifah remained committed to his vision of a just, fair, and intellectually rigorous society grounded in the principles of Islam. His refusal to compromise in the face of political power, his commitment to justice and reasoning, and his ability to unite diverse schools of thought within the Islamic tradition have made him one of the most revered scholars in history. His work continues to be a beacon of guidance for Muslims around the world. It inspires generations of scholars, jurists, and common believers alike. The Hanafi madhhab remains a living tradition, one that continues to evolve while staying true to the intellectual roots laid by Imam Abu Hanifah. His influence extends beyond jurisprudence into the realms of ethics, philosophy, and spirituality. Even in our modern age, where challenges to Islamic tradition and scholarship arise, Imam Abu Hanifah's legacy stands tall, lighting the way for Muslims to approach their faith with reason, compassion, and commitment to justice.
The final reflections.
The story of Imam Abu Hanifah, like that of many great scholars in history, is one marked by deep sacrifice, intellectual brilliance, and a steadfast commitment to justice and faith. His life, filled with challenges and triumphs, remains a beacon for those who seek to understand the delicate balance between faith and reason, between piety and social responsibility. As the generations of scholars and students passed on the legacy of the Hanafi madhhab, the influence of Imam Abu Hanifah grew, but so did the challenges. In his time, as now, the world of Islamic scholarship was not always kind. Yet, it was precisely his willingness to stand up for truth that made him a towering figure, whose ideas continue to shape the world of Islamic jurisprudence and thought. A life of service to Islam. Imam Abu Hanifah's life was one of service. Service to Islam, service to truth, and service to his community. He understood that his responsibility was not merely to write books or teach students, but to ensure that his ideas reached the people who needed them most. He cared not only about the preservation of knowledge, but also about its application in real life. In his discussions of Islamic law, he often emphasized the importance of justice over blind adherence to tradition. He argued that the spirit of the law, its ultimate aim to foster justice, compassion, and fairness, should always be kept in mind when interpreting the Quran and the Sunnah. His resilience in the face of adversity, his ability to maintain his principles in the most trying of circumstances, has inspired millions across the world. Whether he was challenging corrupt rulers, enduring physical abuse in prison, or engaging in fierce intellectual debates with other scholars, he stood firm. Imam Abu Hanifah remained unshaken in his resolve to adhere to the principles of Islamic justice, the legacy of intellectual rigor. One of the central elements of Imam Abu Hanifah's legacy is his intellectual rigor. He was not just a scholar who passed down the traditional knowledge of his time, but a pioneer who innovated within the bounds of Islamic law and thought. His work is foundational to the way modern Muslims approach jurisprudence, and it is reflected in the Hanafi madhab's emphasis on reason, context, and public welfare. In his jurisprudence, Imam Abu Hanifah is celebrated for his openness to ijtihad, independent reasoning. Unlike some of his contemporaries, who placed a heavy emphasis on the textual traditions of the Quran and Hadith, Imam Abu Hanifah encouraged his followers to use reason to interpret these texts. He did not believe in rigid interpretations, but instead recognized the importance of context and public good in shaping legal decisions. This flexibility, grounded in reason, helped to shape a jurisprudential tradition that remains alive and responsive to the needs of society. The Hanafi school, while rooted in classical texts, also retains an element of flexibility and adaptability that allows it to meet the needs of contemporary society. The struggle against tyranny, perhaps one of the most defining aspects of Imam Abu Hanifah's life, was his struggle against tyranny. His refusal to align himself with corrupt rulers, his rejection of state-sponsored oppression, and his unwavering commitment to justice placed him in direct conflict with the Abbasid rulers of his time. His imprisonment, the harsh treatment he endured, and his eventual death in confinement were the ultimate price he paid for his integrity. Yet, in his struggle, Imam Abu Hanifah taught us the importance of standing up for what is right, even when faced with overwhelming odds. His example is a call to action for anyone who seeks to make a difference in the world, to stand firm in the face of injustice and to always advocate for the oppressed, no matter the cost. In this way, Imam Abu Hanifah remains not just a figure of intellectual achievement, but a symbol of resistance against the forces of tyranny and corruption. His life is a testament to the power of individual integrity and the enduring strength of faith. It is also a call to resist oppression in all its forms. The continuing relevance of Imam Abu Hanifah's teachings. Imam Abu Hanifah's teachings continue to resonate today. His insights into Islamic law and his profound understanding of human nature offer valuable guidance for Muslims and non-Muslims alike. In an era where social justice, ethical governance, and the relationship between religion and politics remain hotly debated topics, Imam Abu Hanifah's thought offers both clarity and compassion. The Hanafi school of thought remains the most widely practiced school of jurisprudence in the Muslim world today. It is particularly prevalent in South Asia, Central Asia, and the Balkans. Even in modern times, his teachings are regularly invoked in the debates surrounding issues like women's rights, family law, and financial ethics. The intellectual tools he provided, especially his focus on reasoning and contextual interpretation, continue to be indispensable for scholars and students of Islamic law. In a world that is constantly changing, Imam Abu Hanifah's wisdom remains as relevant as ever. His teachings provide a framework for approaching complex moral questions today. They guide us in an age of globalization, technological advancement, and intercultural dialogue. The final reflection: Imam Abu Hanifah's life was one of remarkable achievements, intellectual, spiritual, and moral. But perhaps his most profound legacy is the example he set for future generations, a legacy of faith, integrity, and intellectual courage. He showed the world that one could remain true to their principles, even in the face of adversity and persecution. As we reflect on his life, we are reminded that the pursuit of knowledge and the struggle for justice are not mere ideals, but actions that require sacrifice. Imam Abu Hanifah's life reminds us that standing for what is right, even when it is difficult, is the truest form of service to God. His influence continues to shine through his students, his writings, and the madhhab that bears his name. But more importantly, his example remains a beacon of light for all who seek truth, justice, and wisdom in the modern world. Imam Abu Hanifah's legacy is immortal, an eternal light that continues to guide us on the path of righteousness and faith.
Alhamdulillah for joining us on this journey through the life of one of Islam's great scholars. We hope this story inspired your heart and deepened your connection with the rich legacy of Islamic knowledge. If you found benefit in today's episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Journey to Jannah, your home for Islamic biographies, wisdom, and timeless guidance. New episodes are uploaded regularly, so turn on the notification bell to never miss a moment of insight. May Allah increase us all in beneficial knowledge and guide us on the path of the righteous. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.